I thought I knew my family. After 15 years of marriage, after raising a daughter I loved more than life itself, I believed I understood the people sleeping under my roof. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And the moment I discovered the truth, my entire world didn't just crack. It shattered into pieces so small, I'm still finding shards embedded in my chest. Let me take you back to where this nightmare begins. I traveled for work. A lot. 3, sometimes 4 times a month, I'd pack my suitcase, kiss my wife and daughter goodbye, and head out for conferences, client meetings, site visits, the usual corporate grind that paid for our comfortable suburban life. My wife stayed home with our daughter, managing the household, volunteering at school events, being the picture-perfect mother everyone in our neighborhood admired. We had what I thought was a solid marriage. Sure, we had our moments. What couple doesn't after 15 years? But nothing that raised any red flags. We laughed together. We planned family vacations. We talked about our daughter's future, her college fund, whether we should renovate the kitchen, normal stuff, boring stuff, the kind of mundane conversations that make up a stable life. My wife had mentioned her brother a few times over the years. He lived across the country, worked in construction or contracting, something like that. She said they weren't particularly close growing up, but they'd reconnected after their mother passed away a few years back. Family tragedy has a way of bringing people together, right? I understood that. I encouraged it, actually. Family matters. So when she told me her brother would be visiting while I was away on business, I didn't think twice about it. In fact, I thought it was nice. She'd have company. Our daughter would get to know her uncle better. What kind of husband would I be to object to that? The first time I noticed something felt off was about 8 months ago. I came home from a week-long trip, exhausted, ready to collapse into my own bed. My daughter, 15 years old, bright, beautiful, with her mother's eyes and what I thought was my stubborn streak, seemed nervous, fidgety. She kept glancing at her mother during dinner, these quick little looks that pinged something in my gut. I asked if everything was okay. My wife smiled that smile I'd known for 15 years and said everything was fine. Her brother had just left that morning. They'd had a nice visit. Our daughter nodded along, pushing food around her plate. I let it go. Over the next several months, the pattern continued. Every time I traveled, her brother would visit. Every time I returned, something felt slightly askew, like walking into a room where furniture has been moved just an inch to the left. Nothing you can quite put your finger on, but wrong nonetheless. My daughter grew more distant, quieter. She started spending more time in her room, door closed, headphones on. When I asked about school, her friends, her life, I got one-word answers. Teenagers, right? That's what I told myself. This is just what happens when kids hit high school. But then came the phone call that changed everything. I was 3 states away, sitting in a hotel room after a particularly brutal day of meetings, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was a woman's voice, hesitant, apologetic. She said she was our neighbor from 2 houses down, the one with the garden we always complimented. She said she'd been wrestling with whether to call me for weeks, but her conscience wouldn't let her stay silent anymore. Your wife's brother, she said, her voice tight with discomfort. The one who visits when you're traveling. I don't think he's her brother. The drive home that night is a blur. I canceled my remaining meetings, threw everything into my suitcase, and drove through the darkness with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My mind raced through every possibility, every explanation that could make this make sense without destroying my life. Maybe the neighbor was mistaken. Maybe she was a busybody with too much time on her hands. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. But deep down, in that place where we bury the truths we don't want to face, I knew. I arrived home at 2 in the morning. The house was dark, quiet. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the front door, trying to summon the courage to walk through it and face whatever waited on the other side. When I finally went inside, I didn't go to bed. I went to my home office and started digging. Phone records, credit card statements, social media accounts I'd never bothered to check because I trusted my wife. I trusted her with everything. What I found made me physically ill. The brother was real, in a sense. But he wasn't her brother. He was her ex-boyfriend from before we met. They dated for 3 years before she and I got together. According to what I pieced together from old social media posts and photos I'd never seen, they'd been serious. Really serious. The kind of serious where people talk about forever. They'd broken up badly, or so I'd always been told. She rarely mentioned him. When she did, it was always in the context of being grateful that relationship ended, because otherwise she never would have met me. Turns out, they'd been in contact the entire time we'd been married. Not just friendly check-ins, regular communication, constant communication. And for the past 2 years, he'd been visiting our home, my home, every single time I left town. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel receipts from establishments in our area during my business trips, photos on his social media of our neighborhood, our local coffee shop, our daughter's school, text messages I managed to access that were intimate, familiar in ways that only come from ongoing physical intimacy. I wanted to wake my wife right then, storm into our bedroom and demand answers, throw the evidence in her face, watch her scramble for explanations that didn't exist. But I didn't. Because I needed to know one more thing first. I needed to know about our daughter. The DNA test kit arrived 2 days later. I ordered it to my office, not our home. The hardest part was getting my daughter's sample without her knowing. A used drinking glass, handled carefully, sealed in the provided bag. My own sample, sent off to a lab with overnight shipping and a request to expedite results. I paid extra. Money didn't matter anymore. Those 5 days waiting for results were the longest of my life. I went through the motions, smiled at breakfast, asked about homework, kissed my wife goodbye when she left for her yoga class. Was she even going to yoga, or was that another lie? Everything felt contaminated now, every memory suspect, every moment we'd shared potentially built on deception. When the email arrived, I was at work. I couldn't open it there. I drove to a park near my office, sat on a bench overlooking a playground where happy children played under their oblivious parents' supervision, and clicked the attachment. The DNA test confirmed it. I was her biological father. You might think that would have been a relief. It wasn't. Because it meant my wife had been maintaining this affair for years while raising our daughter, while sleeping in our bed, while playing the role of devoted partner and mother. It meant the betrayal ran deeper than I'd even imagined. But here's the thing that truly broke me. The detail that turned this from a nightmare into something worse. That evening, I sat my daughter down, just the two of us. I told her I knew about the visits. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just said I knew her mother's brother wasn't really her brother, and I needed to understand what had been happening in our house while I was away. The way her face crumbled will haunt me forever. And then she told me everything. She'd known the truth for over a year. My wife had sat our daughter down one afternoon and explained that the man visiting was someone very special, someone she'd loved before me, someone she still loved. She told our daughter that adult relationships were complicated, that sometimes people could love more than one person, that this didn't mean she loved me any less. She'd asked our daughter to keep this secret, to protect the family, to think about what would happen if I found out, the divorce, the split custody, the financial strain, the upheaval of the life she'd always known. My 15-year-old daughter had been carrying this weight for over a year, watching her mother betray me, watching this man, this stranger, walk through our home like he belonged there, being asked to choose between her parents' marriage and her mother's demands for secrecy. The question I want to ask you is this: What do you do when the person you're supposed to protect most in this world has been forced to protect a lie that's slowly destroying her? How do you forgive that? How do you move forward when the betrayal extends beyond you to your own child? My daughter told me she wanted to tell me so many times. Every time I came home, every time she saw me smile at her mother, oblivious. She said the guilt was eating her alive, that she couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at school, couldn't figure out how to be a daughter to both of us when one of us didn't even know the rules of the game being played. She was 15 years old, and my wife had weaponized her, used her as a shield, a cover, a co-conspirator in the dismantling of her own family. That night, I confronted my wife. I laid out everything I knew: the neighbor's call, the investigation, the DNA test. And most damning of all, what she'd done to our daughter. She didn't deny it. She cried. She said she never meant for it to happen, that she'd tried to end it multiple times, that she loved me, but she also loved him, and she couldn't choose. She said she thought she could have both, that what I didn't know wouldn't hurt me, that she was protecting our family by keeping everyone together under one roof. Protecting our family. Those were her actual words. I moved out the next day, filed for divorce the following week. The legal proceedings are ongoing, messy, painful, expensive in every sense of the word. My daughter is in therapy now, trying to untangle the emotional manipulation she endured. Some days she can barely look at her mother. Other days she defends her, because that's what children do. They love their parents even when their parents fail them spectacularly. The man, her ex-boyfriend, the brother, has apparently disappeared from the picture now that everything is out in the open. Funny how that works. He got what he wanted for years without any of the responsibility or consequences, and when the situation exploded, he simply walked away. My wife is alone in our former house, which will likely be sold as part of the settlement, facing the reality that her attempt to have everything has left her with very little. As for me, I'm rebuilding. Learning to trust again feels impossible right now, but I'm trying. Learning to be the father my daughter deserves, someone she can rely on without conditions or secrets. Learning to recognize red flags I missed, patterns I ignored because I wanted to believe in the life we'd built. The hardest part isn't the betrayal itself. It's looking back at 15 years of memories and not knowing which ones were real, which smiles were genuine, which I love yous were true. It's like having your entire history rewritten in a language you can't quite read. People ask me if I saw the signs. Truthfully, maybe, probably. But we see what we want to see, don't we? We build lives on foundations of trust because the alternative, suspecting everyone, questioning everything, is no way to live. Until suddenly it is. Until suddenly you realize that blind trust isn't trust at all. It's just willful ignorance wearing a prettier name. Here's what I know now. Secrets have weight. They bend people, warp relationships, crush the ones forced to carry them. My daughter shouldn't have been put in that position. No child should. And yet, in homes across the country, kids are holding their parents' secrets, bearing burdens they never asked for, navigating adult problems with teenage emotional tools. If you're in a relationship, any relationship, and you're asking someone, especially a child, to keep a secret that protects your lies, you've already lost. You've already caused the damage. The revelation is just the aftermath. I spent 15 years building what I thought was a family. What I actually built was a beautiful facade with rotting foundations, and when it finally collapsed, the people I loved most were buried in the rubble with me. The truth will set you free, they say. But first, it'll destroy everything you thought you knew. Trust that.